Hello and welcome to this week's session on composing for film and games. So what we're going to be doing this week, firstly to recap last semester's lecture on film music, then secondly looking at attributes of film and games composers, thirdly looking at electronic music soundtracks, before going on to look at how we imitate real instruments, particularly orchestral instruments. Then there's going to be some practical work for you to have a go at during the session, and we're going to outline some areas for further study at the end of these notes. Okay, so firstly, we did something on music composition and synchronization last semester. So we looked at the role of music in visual media, we looked at techniques for music composition, concepts involved in music synchronization, and the relationship between music and the overall sound design. So you can find out more about these by reviewing the materials from semester 1, week 10. If you have a look at the notes, we can have a look at what in more detail about what this contains. So to give a very brief overview of it, music is an extra dimension to the storytelling and narrative that works on both intellectual and emotional levels. Okay, then moving on, we looked at music's role in stylization with these examples. We looked at the idea of characterization, so musical elements that portray characters, such as in Peter and the Wolf and in Star Wars. We looked at how it can impact storytelling, so creating things like anticipation, misdirection, different meanings. So the example of Space Odyssey and these spaceships dancing around like ballroom dancers. Emotion, sync points. So take some time to review these functions if you're not already familiar with these. So if you're just doing semester 2 of the module, for example, take time to review these notes and these different examples. Okay, we looked at films with no music, such as The Birds and No Country for Old Men, and a particular scene in Lord of the Rings where the music just stops and the sound effects take over. There's then some techniques for music composition that start by looking at various parallels between music and film generally. So music, melody is similar to the character, harmony is similar to the setting. So this is taken from the Sonnenschein book, Sonnenschein's sound design. Sonnenschein also looks at some techniques for planning out your soundtrack. So you can take two kind of opposing themes that are in the film, and you can kind of map out how these vary. So here we've got comedy and drama, so we've got more comedic moments, more dramatic moments. You can think of other dimensions for this, such as life versus death, power versus surrender, and so on. This can really help you plan out how your composition is going to unfold. Okay, there's some tips here to review. And we looked at music synchronization, where you use existing music to score the film. So early Tarantino films are a really good example of this. And here's some particularly good examples, in my own personal opinion, really, that work really, really well. So have a look at these and think about why they work so well. There's some more information here about the music supervisor role. Might not be a kind of job that you'd ever thought about before, but there's some interesting things on these links that tell you about what's involved in those kind of what's involved in those roles. And then at the other end is looking at actually writing for music libraries. So you can actually make a decent living once you get the knack of this, is writing for libraries. And here's some examples of libraries that you can submit music to. And then there's actual synchronization techniques such as cutting, fading, cross-fading, beat matching and time stretching, and making music sound diegetic or non-diegetic and switching between the two. We also looked at a relationship to overall sound design, so thinking about music and sound effects together. Some of the most successful films, there's very close collaboration between the sound supervisor and the composer. And then some things to think about when mixing a soundtrack. Okay, and then here's some further study for those, for some of these ideas. Okay, so that was last semester. Very brief recap. So please, if you're not familiar with that material, or need to refamiliarize yourself, please take some time to have a look through those notes and those examples. Okay, going back to this semester then. So seeking to build on some of this material, we can look at attributes of a composer. So this is from a book by Carlin and Wright, 2004, which is from the reading list. So one thing is being ready. If you're going to go for it, you better have the goods the day somebody knocks on your door and says, can you show up tomorrow with a cue? So sometimes opportunities will present themselves with very little warning. So be good at either writing quickly or having a library with loads and loads of ideas that are pretty much good to go. And you can present these to a director straight away and show what you're all about and what you can do. Interpersonal skills are really, really key. I've been banging on about this quite a lot. It's like, yes, you can be very good musician, very talented, working on your own, but working with other people in such a collaborative environment, such as the film and games industries, then you need to be able to collaborate. So here's a quote by Mark McKenzie. If guys really want to be successful, the biggest factor is being able to work well with people and having people like you. It's not a matter of what you know about music as much as it is how well you work with people. So you've got to work very closely with directors, producers, game developers or sound designers and be able to get on with them, embrace their ideas, communicate your own ideas, be flexible, which takes us on to the next point. You've got to be able to work within guidelines. You've got to be able to give somebody what they want that is in line with their overall vision. So you've got to surrender control. You can't just do what you'd like. You've got to work within what somebody wants and what works for the particular project. You've got to be able to incorporate changes. So people are going to give you feedback on your work and make suggestions, and you've got to take those on board and be happy to do so. And also learn on the job. You might have to incorporate instruments you've never worked with before. You might need to know how to score for those or record them. So new techniques might sometimes need to be embraced, new ways of working. Also being able to deal with pressure, so working to tight deadlines and dealing with people's agendas that maybe aren't made clear at the outset, but they come in as the project unfolds. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to move on to talk about electronic music in film and games composition.